Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Berman. Welcome to the Cyber Hero Adventure Show. And we have a great one for you today because we're going to be talking about something that just about everybody has confronted or might confront someday, which is cybersecurity crisis communications. And we know that the way you speak about this topic, your various stakeholders that you have to address need to get clear, concise, and actionable information. So that you keep things under control. And speaking of keeping things under control, let me add to the show Dan Chmielewski. I'm not sure
Hey.
how under control you actually are because you are a funny guy.
Thank you. I'm trying. Like I say, I'm here all week. Stand-up comedy would be a thing I'd like to do one of these days. We'll see how it goes.
Exactly. And as just prior to recording, you were kind enough to point out some cool things in your background, pertaining to comics, and you're a big comic fan. Maybe you can share with our audience a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, I've been buying comics since I was a kid, and like Comic-Con is the one show I willingly go to every year. I try to hit a couple of them. There's WonderCon in Anaheim I'll go to the LA Comic-Con as well. They're a lot of fun, and I like when people put a lot of effort in their costumes, and I will scroll through the books to see comics I had as a kid that are now worth thousands of dollars, and I'll take a picture and text it to my mother and let her know, hey, Mom, I used to have this one. And she said, enough, I threw out a fortune, and she did. So that's the way it goes. So, and I still buy, by the way, a number of titles, every month. So it's the way it is.
Well, I'd love to hear that, because first of all, our audience knows that amongst other things, we do superhero comics about cybersecurity. Right. But, it's an interesting thing. And I love your perspective on this because our mission is to distill complicated technology information into something that's entertaining and engaging. I mean, what are your thoughts about that? Do you lose credibility because of the medium?
No, it's all about how do you make your message easy to understand, follow, to get, helps explain. If you can explain complex technology simply, that works. I mean, we all work in cybersecurity. How often have you run into a call from like a mother-in-law or, they got a call from the IRS. Oh my gosh, I've got a call. They want my social security number. Like, don't do that. Or the bank says there's a problem and they got to click a link. I'm just, you try to help people understand. If you're getting these, they're trying to scam you. You just need to go back and use common sense, and a vehicle using a comic is an ideal way to explain how not to get scammed.
And by the way, for our audience, this was not pre-planned. So
No.
What you're hearing, is actually live. And we're really looking forward to hearing your considerable expertise. You've been in this industry a long time, Dan. Tell us your origin story.
Well, I've been doing PR for a long time. I got into technology PR initially with satellite TV and cable TV, and the company I worked for did cable TV security. They had a trap that went on the telephone line that if you weren't getting HBO, they would screw this trap in. It would drop the signal out. So when you went to the HBO channel, it would squiggle the lines. So technically, I've been doing signal security for a long time. And then that led into a company that did local area networking and internet networking. I wound up working at Data General. I worked at big PR firms, small PR firms, big companies, small companies. And whenever I worked in a situation where a company had security as an element, nobody wanted it in PR. It was like, I was just fascinated by it. I think this is amazing. I can't believe this is so interesting. There weren't a lot of editors writing about security necessarily. There weren't a lot of books dedicated to it, but it's something I just fell in love with. So I've actually been doing cybersecurity PR for 25 years or so. So I was working at Rainbow Technologies in the early 90s through like 2004. They were acquired by another company, and they wanted me to move to Baltimore. At the time, my wife was a journalist working for a paper in the Bay Area, and the beat she had was, I was going to let her sacrifice that. So I had a meeting with a couple of analysts at RSA who said, hey, do your own thing. And I did. Next thing you know, a lead popped into my lap, and then a couple weeks later, another one did. But for me to chase that business, I had to be incorporated. So called my lawyer, got started. That was 17 years ago. I have a team of 11 professionals that work with me now. Folks in New England, folks in Florida, folks in the Bay Area, Southern California, where I'm based. I worked in Boston for 9 years, cut my teeth with, some great shops there. And, but I've been doing it. And then now the funny part is folks I worked with 25 years ago in Boston are calling me, hey, I'm really interested in security. Well, you weren't 20 years ago when it was, but that's the way it is. So like, it is, I have been to just about every RSA. I remember when RSA was still in San Jose for a while. And I'll remember Black Hat when it was tabletops. And it wasn't cool to do PR at Black Hat at the time. And if you did PR, it was like, hey, let's go have lunch, let's go have breakfast, or let's get together for a cocktail. And now it's just like any other trade show. But so that's kind of my origin story. I will say my differentiation as a PR firm where it works with cybersecurity companies is I work with a lot of innovators, smaller companies, mid-sized companies. We don't do minimum monthly retainers. So, we can do a lot we just work with a client about what do you want to accomplish? What sort of budget do you have to play with? And we create a program that works for them and works for us. And it's fine. And so there are times we'll work with companies that probably couldn't even afford a junior professional. But, we have a program that will get them coverage. So when a client goes away, they go away for one of three reasons. Client runs out of money. That does happen. I get a client that gets acquired, happens all the time. And then there's regime change where we've helped a client, they just got a big round of funding, and their VC says, no, with these guys now. And that's okay, because I get business that way too. We are on our third and fourth go-rounds with certain CMOs. So and we've been doing this for a while, and it's fun. So I enjoy doing what I do every single day. And the reason it's Madison Alexender PR is my daughter's Madison, my son's Alexander. My wife's a journalist, so I get a lot of questions. Are you related to Dan Chmielewski? And I say only by marriage. So that's it.
You realize this is being recorded.
I know.
But all right. So anyway, speaking of wonderful people, let me bring in to the show Emily Donahue. She's the PR director of the Risk Assistance Network and Exchange, referred to as RANE. And hi, Emily. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're really glad to have you. You were one of the first guests that we had on the show a long time ago. You have a high tolerance for risk or something?
I do, indeed, just like my company.
So tell us a little bit about your origin story and your company.
Well, I spent 30 years on the other side of PR. I was a journalist, and I had to work with PR people all the time, and I used to give them feedback on their pitches, and now I'm getting feedback on my pitches. But let me tell you a little bit about RANE, which is, we are a risk intelligence company, and we provide access to critical insights, analysis, and support to ensure business continuity and resiliency for the people who we serve. RANE's community-based solutions help address a range of enterprise risks, from safety and security to cyber and information, geopolitical and legal, regulatory, and compliance risk.
Well, I'm not sure if you believe in coincidences, but we happen to have a video that your CEO has that's going to talk a little bit about RANE. And I want to, on a personal note, thank you and RANE for supporting our mission and making the show possible. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
What I like to explain to clients is that I am not, nor could I be, ever the smartest person in the room. But I've been very, very fortunate to have been exposed to the rooms that did have some of the smartest people. And what was missing and has been missing in the marketplace is to connect people with the best sources of information and the best resources so they can make more informed decisions. What is needed in the marketplace is a more efficient way to connect information and resources to those in need, and those who are able to provide need the ability to get to the market sooner, quicker, etc. In the current environment, the resources, the tools, and the information that enterprises need and the expertise that is actually out there does not have decades to find each other. Things have to connect much quicker. Our job is to continue on a daily basis to bring people together. And it's one of the reasons why we chose, we call it risk assistance, but we say network and exchange. And we want those last two words to be taken literally, because it is meant to be a broad network, and it is meant to be an exchange of ideas and efforts. And that is the objective of RANE.
Yeah, indeed. And it was really just kind of a coincidence, Emily. We were also talking, from before that we've set up the Cyber Hero Network, and it has
That's
this
right.
kind of double meaning, like, what we're doing, kind of narrow casting, that kind of thing, but also, human connections at a very high level. And so tell us a little bit about, how RANE operates, and then we'll move on to a next wonderful guest, and we'll jump into the topic at hand.
Sure. Well, RANE is, we are a company, and we gather information. We gather information not only from open sources, but we gather it from the membership that we have, and we collate and provide data. We provide analysis. We provide security. We do business security briefings. We do webinars. We are sort of a massive pile of information, and we also help businesses develop their own safety and security, their own cybersecurity. We help them plan for crises, which is I'm very excited to talk with you about today. And we are just a few years old, and like you, we've just exploded with membership. We've got now more than 400 leading corporations and governments and educational institutions, and thousands and thousands and thousands of members worldwide. So,
wow, that's fantastic. And speaking of someone who has piles of amazing data, that was not my words, Richard. That was hers. Richard Stiennon. He's an author of the Security Yearbook 2021. And a principal analyst of IT Harvest. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Gary. Always great to join you.
Yeah, and Richard, you've been on, I think maybe 3 times now. You just don't have anything else going on, or what?
Yeah, I'm just sitting here in my writing shed, and anytime, I'm just always here.
Yeah, and for our audience, I'm sure many of you know Richard from the incredible body of work that he creates. He's an amazing analyst, and compiles incredibly useful information, including that security yearbook. Why don't you tell our audience about that? And then at the end of the show, we'll have information so that people can contact all 3 of you.
Yeah, sure. So actually, when I started IT Harvest in 2006, I had this burning desire to have all the data available to me. So I'm, an engineer by background, and my experience at Gartner was frustrating because I realized, Gartner had acquired DataQuest probably 10 years before, and I assumed DataQuest collected all that information, but they actually didn't. So when I started my own firm to still fulfill all the tasks that an analyst does, I needed something to analyze. I needed data. So I started collecting, started with just a spreadsheet of all the vendors in the space. And, if you task me, I can probably write down at this point, probably 500 off the top of my head. But over time, I got to where I am today with 2,680 vendors. And
wow, wait, let's stop there 1 second. That's the first time I've heard that number. 2,680 vendors in the cybersecurity community with a capital C.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
And these are vendors, somebody who, creates and delivers and sells their own products. So I don't track open source yet. And I don't track consultants and cyber insurance companies, things like that. So these are just the people that make up the space. And the goal is ultimately to be able to say, hey, the space is this big in terms of money, because I have to do a bottoms up analysis of the revenue of all those companies. Yeah. And then I'll be able to report quarter by quarter what the growth is. Because right now the analyst firms just guess. They say, well, probably 9% this year because it's been in the news so much. And yet every single vendor that is publicly traded grows at 24%. So, and I know the smaller vendors are growing much, much faster. Some of them are doubling every 6 months. So, so that kind of analysis, I hope, is valuable to the people who buy the security yearbook, where I put all the data in this book every single year. And this is kind of turned into my life work. I didn't realize when I had the concept for it that it'd be something I could just keep doing every year, and I am.
Well, let me just ask you something that's always been kind of on my mind as I've had the privilege of listening, learning from these amazing thought leaders. The criminals share information freely. They're horizontally structured, it seems. They help one another out. They have all these exchanges to various degrees on a horizontal basis. But my impression is that, the defenders are vertically structured, sometimes because of intellectual property or because of laws or because of other things. And the thing that I've been spending a lot of time learning about are the ISACs and things like that. Is that a valid assumption, this sort of horizontal versus vertical, kind of thing? Or how would you characterize it from your perch?
I don't think of the criminals as sharing that much because when they do share, they're always totally anonymous to each other, right? They have to have good OPSEC because half the participants in their online forums that are open are either threat intelligence companies that got bots in there or law enforcement that actually has agents sitting in there trying to get people who are scamming with credit cards. So it's a very dangerous game. But not as, you're protected if you're in certain countries in the world against repercussions directly. But you're also dealing with a bunch of criminals who will, hire somebody to kill you at the drop of a hat, which has happened in the business. So I think on that side, the defenders are much better off, right? And yes, ISACs are great information sharing sources in the United States. Of course, there aren't necessarily international ISACs. But I always stress that, look, at the vendors will share information, right? The vendors actually are the nexus of pulling all this together. So it's so important for me to get briefed by vendors all the time. That's my main source of information. Now that I can't go to physical events anymore, I don't get the scuttlebutt that I could get from Dan just by pulling them aside in the hallway at RSA.
Right.
So it's really, and people don't want to do that over Zoom, right? Somebody could be recording them. Mm-hmm. So we are, the COVID has impacted our information sharing from an industry perspective, right? Who's doing what, where, and what's going to happen next.
Indeed, and we have some breaking news here. Stand by. 30,000 websites are hacked daily. 64% of companies worldwide have had at least one form of a cyber attack, and wow, there were 20 million breach records in March 2021. It goes on here. Last year, the ransomware grew by 150%. Email is primarily responsible, 94%. And oh my goodness, every 39 seconds, there is a new attack somewhere on the web. That is nuts. And around 24,000 malicious mobile apps are blocked daily on the internet. Let me just throw this out there. Dan, what's your assessment?
Yeah, ransomware continues to be a global problem. If you recall, a couple of weeks back, where President Biden talked to Vladimir Putin about, hey, how would you like your pipelines to be, gone after? And then the major ransomware group in Russia suddenly disappeared overnight. I think the United States is very good talking about our blue team defensive capabilities, but rarely do we talk about our offensive capabilities. When I talk with friends, they'll ask about, well, geez, all these hackers are coming after us. I go, oh, don't underestimate the ability of this country to wage cyber warfare. Just saying, it's one of those things. So, and the other thing on the mobile attacks do not surprise me at all. API security is a huge deal right now. A lot of companies are emerging in that space. So, I think you hit on the two hottest issues going on right now: API security, which is everything's going mobile. I just got back from Black Hat not long ago, Gary, where I saw you, and I'm deleting all my banking apps off my phone. And then when I got back, I reinstalled them all because, I'm not going to get a burner while I'm there because I think it's kind of ridiculous. So, but all the same, yeah, I'm not surprised with those stats at all. It's just one of those things.
And Emily, you wanted to jump in there?
I was just going to say that we also produce a podcast, and the number one most popular topic besides COVID for our podcast is cybersecurity. And, the number of ransomware attacks has gotten so great that one of the guests on our podcast recently said that companies are going to stop, insurance companies are going to stop providing insurance for ransomware because it's just gotten so out of control.
Very expensive.
So.
And that 150% growth, that's way low, way low. It's probably more like 600%.
Yeah,
wow.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
I know incident response companies that are going to handle 1,200 ransomware cases this year alone. That's just a small little company, right? And those don't get reported. The journalists don't find out about them. Right. They're just happening right and left.
Well, here's an example, of a recent attack. This was, Accenture, and when I saw that, my head kind of exploded going, if these folks, are vulnerable, then, what does everyone else do?
Well, even a more prominent one, earlier this spring was, the two major software companies that actually provide cybersecurity. They were both ransomware attacks. Yeah,
and it's interesting. Coincidentally, I just picked up this image. 500,000 Fortinet VP accounts. VPN accounts. Dan. So let's just go with the data. So people of various sizes are going to be attacked. What's the first thing from a crisis communications perspective that you advise your clients to do?
Well, crisis communications is its own interesting animal when it comes to PR. Okay, I know I'm based in Southern California, and there are crisis communications firms tied to the entertainment industry, where the agencies that do that are getting anywhere from $350 to $500 an hour, and it really comes down to common sense. What happened? How did it happen? How do you keep it from happening again? Whose fault is it? What you keep your circle as tight as you can, so you can come up with information, and then you channel it back out through some individual sources. You keep it tight and bright, if you will. But what it comes down to is, how do you fix it? You have to be upfront and honest. There is a school of thought, we don't want to say anything to anybody. Yes, journalists, and I'm sure, Emily, you're going to agree with me, being a former journalist yourself, they're always going to find the story. They're always going to get it. I had Terry Robinson, as former editor over at SC Magazine, and she writes for Threat Post and Endpoint Magazine and Security Boulevard now. But she was on stage in front of all these third-party risk management professionals, and I said, do you have anything you want to say to these people about working with a journalist? And she just looked at him and said, don't lie to me, because I'll find out. And that's the last time you'll ever get any airtime with me. So don't lie, tell the truth, figure out, are you responsible for it? Is someone else responsible for it? But still, if it happened on your watch, you have an obligation to explain what happened, what the damage was, how you're going to fix it. Are you going to make someone whole? Did someone get hurt physically? Did someone get hurt financially? Do you fix it that way? And then you offer a plan to make sure it doesn't happen again. And it comes off as a case study, as a warning to other people about, hey, this is how we handled it, and this happened to us. Please shore this up, offer advice and counsel back out forward. It's not so much the hourly rate some agencies charge, it's the time commitment. You have a very tight window to get all your facts, and you have to make sure you're meticulous and that you're detail oriented and that everything you do is accurate and correct, and then communicate it clearly and plainly.
Well, let me build on that. Forgive the interruption. I just want to build. You said so many important things just now. So, Emily, as a former journalist, getting to the truth and to the facts and don't lie to them. What type of planning or response should an organization have in place, and how many times should they have rehearsed it? So they're not just sort of caught live.
Well, I think that's a really great question. For us, we think that crisis management is not just one thing, right? Crisis management can be divided into the three phases: the pre-crisis, the crisis response, the post-crisis. That's the same with the corporate risk program, right? 3 inflection points: the prevention, the response, and the remediation of any risk. And so I would say that you begin your crisis management with the safety and security management for the business: physical security, personal security, cybersecurity, etc. And then you begin training. You train and train and train. And any communications, PR should be part of the team, if not actively involved in managing the risk, at least simultaneously aware at all times of potential for risk and training, because nothing like this happens in isolation.
Exactly. Emily, I want to throw one other thing out there. I always say the greatest, natural adversary for PR is legal team, your lawyers, but what you can say and cannot say. And lawyers have shut down a number of good PR ideas over the years. I'm sure that we've all encountered that. However, it's really important that PR and legal get together on language that's agreeable and acceptable. Yep. And it really has. That's the time when, folks that don't normally work well together have to work well together.
That's a really interesting insight, about kind of playing nice, with one another. From your perspective, Richard, you've listened and learned to countless, attacks and incidences. What are you hearing about the best practices that you've seen in responding to crisis?
Yeah, every incident, there's this little back story that goes along with it. So criticism of the victim is quite often the case in our industry, is, they shouldn't have been attacked in the first place. But then the criticism falls on the crisis response. And, always people are not following the advice of Emily and Dan, right? They're keeping things back, telling the audience later. And one question I got for Dan and Emily is, probably the first legal requirement is to inform your customers if their data was lost or if there's a vulnerability in your product. And yet we have cases so common, right? There'll be an email sent to every single customer, but no public release of the story. And then, of course, of the thousands of customers of Microsoft Azure recently, somebody sends one to a journalist, and then the journalist starts digging and asking tough questions that you're not prepared for because you probably didn't have a good crisis response plan. And that seems to be just a self-inflicted wound. It should be coincident, right?
You're exactly right. I have gotten letters in the mail about a breach. I'm like, well, hey, thanks. This breach happened 2 weeks ago, and now I'm getting snail mail to letting me know about it. Hey, thanks so much, guys. No. Yeah, and they still come in. I mean, but that's a legal requirement in some cases. It just comes down to there are ways to communicate instantaneously. You have wire services that get automatic pickup everywhere and are an excellent way of communicating all at once. It's also a good idea for the CEO or whoever is responsible for a response to do a Zoom call or an open Zoom call or record a YouTube video to explain what happened and direct people where they can find more information. There's no shortage of communications channels by which to communicate what happened. Okay, but the hardest part is gathering the facts at the beginning. I represent the Flash Memory Summit, which is one non-security client, believe it or not. And a couple of years ago, up in Santa Clara, there was a fire at the convention center in the exhibit hall, and there were fire trucks everywhere, and the management team everyone was like, "Well, calm down. There's smoke. They're draining the water out from the sprinkler system. Nobody's dead. Nobody's hurt. We can open the sessions in the ballrooms that are happening elsewhere. We're going to delay an hour, and then we're going to get caught up, and we're going to keep posting updates to what happens." So the exhibit hall was shut down. I'm still not sure what happened. I think somebody threw a stack of literature on top of a power bank, and it caught fire. So, and I'm sure that the insurance company has taken a lot of claims for the companies that lost equipment, lost booths, and stuff like that. But the thing was, calm down. Nobody's hurt. Nobody's dead. And for me as a PR person, what I had to do was shoot down stories about. There was one story that ran that said exhibitors were streaming out of a smoke-filled exhibit hall. I go, fire happened at 5 a.m. There was nobody at a trade show at 5 a.m.
Wow.
So stuff like that, And
That's
then
interesting. So Emily, let me come back to you on that point. everything is so fast and so instantaneous in terms of information flow, as Dan just laid out very well. What type of filtering process, should an organization have to ensure that there's alignment, on the message, and that it is accurate, and how do you manage time, and time to communicate these things?
Right. Well, I agree, first of all, that there are no shortages of ways or places where you can communicate information. I agree that the only way to come out of something is to remain calm and to tell the truth. But I also think one key takeaway for businesses is to make sure your employees know first.
Yeah.
Because your employees, excuse me, I'm going to cough. Your employees are representatives of the company, but they're also involved in the sort of panic like you were just describing. And so as long as they are aware of what's going on, and then they are also representing your company, then they will sort of help keep the temperature low. And then the time that is needed to get the message out and do all of the things that Dan said is not used to calm the employees. And that's my number one input there.
That's incredibly interesting. And, so Richard, again, you have a very unusual perch in that, everyone in the industry trusts you and they look up to you because of the work that you do and the stature that you've earned over time. So what happens when someone calls you and says, Richard, I need help. We've just been attacked. What's your answer to them from a communications perspective?
Yeah, there's a bunch of questions, right? It's like, do you have an incident response plan already? If so, you should be pushing the button and getting everybody to come together on it. Quite often they don't. Can I jump in there? This is so funny because as a journalist, I was a news director, and one of the very first things I did was to have the incident response, right? This is what we do. This is who we call. This is how fast we call. This is secondary. This is tertiary. And nobody ever followed it from the top down. Everybody was yelling crosswise. So. Yeah. But it's nice to have at least a list of all the people to call and their emergency phone numbers. And that at least when you decide that you've got to talk to the CFO now, you can get a hold of him or her on the cruise ship, wherever they are.
Well, this is an interesting point given COVID and working anywhere right now, because of the convergence of everyone's lives. And so, on one hand, when a crisis happens like this, you want to be able to call the professional aspect of that person into the scene. But on the other hand, they might be worried about their kids in school and things like that. I mean, how do we navigate and prioritize, something like this, Dan? What are your thoughts about that?
It really comes down to again, you have to have a methodical way of approaching the crisis you're dealing with, and the public you need to communicate with. It really, employees absolutely one, partners, another one, and the public in general. But it comes down to people need to take responsibility when. It has to come high on up. People need to take responsibility. People need to show integrity. And the best part is, how do you outline what are you going to do about it? That's the hardest one, and that's where PR and legal are going to fight. By the way, right there, how are you going to make it right? And the industry, by the way, is not going to have a problem telling you was the apology sincere? Was the InfoSec community is very good about saying, oh, come on, guys, let's. There was a blog post not too long ago from the RSA conference where it got routinely attacked on Twitter, and they took the post down and they said, hey, this didn't meet our editorial standards, but at least we're not blaming it on an intern. And that happens. Okay. So, but it, all the same, well, why did post run in the first place? If it didn't meet your standards, guys, sorry, we can chop that one to bits. But here's the thing: Twitter is very good about letting you know if your plan of reaction isn't good enough. Other social media platforms are also very good about telling you what they think. And there are trolls that exist, and I always consider criticism from somebody that names themselves with their real name far more seriously than somebody that hides behind a handle. That's the way it is. I hope that answers the question. So,
yeah, great insight. Emily, do you want to jump in on that?
Well, I just think it's important that, as Dan said, it's critically important to define what a crisis is for your company, right? Not every incident is a crisis that requires the whole company response. Right. And, defining this crisis will ensure more effective and sort of efficient use of resources. So, as I sort of pointed out colloquially with the newsroom, a crisis, no amount of pre-planning will actually resolve the crisis, right? You actually have to be prepared for unexpected, disruptive incidents, and you have to be prepared for that intense media coverage. And as you pointed out, Gary, maybe somebody is out, worried about how it comes across to their kids. I think before you go public, you actually have to call your family. I mean, it's really important that there's all sorts of communicating going on simultaneously, and yet following the predefined, this is a crisis or this isn't a crisis.
Yeah, that's incredibly useful. I mean, we could just go on, and I hope the three of you come back at some point in the future. And as we're wrapping up, Richard, you want to leave our audience with something you'd like to amplify about your work, and then if you can let them know how they can maybe get a copy of your great book.
Yeah, I do want to amplify that, or extend that. Don't lie to journalists. Don't lie to industry analysts, because we do find out, right? We outlast your role at your company as a PR person or something. The next person might have a different set of lies to tell us, and we'll recognize those when they happen as well. So you can find me all over LinkedIn, Twitter, or at it-harvest.com, where you can purchase Security Yearbook 2021 and a discounted copy of 2020. All valuable information, does not age.
Very good. No. Richard, you have other books that are very useful for everybody out there too.
Yeah.
Sorry. And you really should plug the Upwards to the Right one. Sorry. For folks that need to understand analyst relations, Richard's books is invaluable. And it's a great read when you're on a cross-country flight.
You're a great PR person. So Richard, let's take that. So just tell us about one or of your other books.
Yeah. So, I was following the advice of, author guidance, which is write what you know. And after years at Gartner and then years as a CMO at Fortinet, I had both sides of the equation about industry analyst relations. So I just sat down and in a couple of weeks wrote Up and to the Right, just straight out of my head, and then published it. And it's still, it's still the bestseller in the analyst influence arena.
I'm going to buy it.
I can't think of a better book for anybody who needs to understand how to work with analysts and what they do, what they don't do.
Look, you just got a sale from Emily.
Yeah, that's right.
First time that's ever happened.
I found this conversation fascinating, to be in the presence of two such renowned and experts.
Oh, don't sell yourself short. You were great too. Thank you so much.
Right on.
Gary, thanks so much for having us. Really, this was fun.
Good. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience that you want to amplify, or how people can get in touch with you?
Well, if you want to reach me, www.MadisonAlexenderPR.com. I know that's a lot of stuff to get through. Our technology agency, PR is a relationship business. And the only final thought I do want to share is that I have done this, and members of my team have done this. Richard looks an awful lot like Neil Rubenking from PC Magazine. And I tweeted one time, you never see these guys in the same room. And then lo and behold, at Black Hat 2019, there they were. So we got a shot of them, and they switched badges, which was a lot of fun. So Brenda Christian from my team, she's in Florida, loved that picture. It was just like, and I've called Neil Richard, and I've called Richard Neil, and my members of my team have done the same thing. We go, why do these guys look like brothers? They really do. I should dig that photo up and put it out there next time for you.
Indeed. Where in Florida does she work? Or
Oh, she's on the Gulf Coast in Cape Coral. So yeah.
Okay, great.
And again, I've got Maureen McGregor up in the Boston area, and Suzanne Tuckler is in the Silicon Valley area for me. And actually, Maureen, Suzanne, and I all worked together at Proteon, which is a token ring LAN vendor in Metro Boston years ago.
Cool.
So
Cool.
it's just one of those things. We put the band back together.
Indeed.
They must have been babies. I could see you being that old, but not them.
They are. They absolutely are.
On that upbeat note, Emily, once again, thanks to you and the Risk Assistance Network and Exchange for helping make this possible. And you'll have the final word. Is there something you'd like to amplify and make sure our audience knows how to get in touch with you?
Oh, sure. Well, you can get in touch with me at pr@ranenetwork.com, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. But one thing I did want to amplify is when the crisis is over, you have to review what went right and what went wrong. And then you have to begin the training all over again.
And every crisis, it's not the same. It's not the same roadmap. Everything is a little different.
Yep.
Indeed. Well, on that note, on behalf of a grateful digital universe and to all of you, the unsung cyber heroes who toil in anonymity to keep us safe, thank you so much for who you are and what you do and why you do it. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Gary.